Good morning, everybody. Welcome, Dungeons and Dragons enthusiasts. Welcome, DMs all over the world. Welcome, young adventure writers. My name is Ian. I am the guild director for the Young Adventure Writers Guild. And today I wanted to bring to you a tip for writing your own campaigns and doing a little bit of what we call world building, how to add some character and some detail and some meaning to the stories that you tell for your players in Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm going to open up my Young Adventure Writers notebook and see what we have today. You may know that I'm also, my day job, I'm a teacher. I teach geography and history, and more recently, I teach French and Spanish. So if you've taken grade 9 geography, you might recognize the phrase, what's there? Why is it there? Why do we care? This is something that we can repeat, and we can use that tenet to think about the objects in our day-to-day lives. We look at a physical object, or we look at some human geography elements, and we say, okay, what is in this place? And then we think about, okay, why is that thing in this place? And then the last step is, how does that interact with my day-to-day life? How does my sphere of me living my life interact with that, even tangentially? And that brings me to, why do I care about that? And that's a really useful framework if I want to understand, the physical or the human world around me in the city or in the place that I live. Now, as a dungeon master, as a writer of your own campaign, you can use that to backwards plan the objects and the people that you're putting into your story to give them extra meaning for the world, of course, and then for your players to uncover. It just adds more layers of that onion, that if your players want to go and interact with a non-player character or with an object, that it's a framework for you to have some answers as to why that thing is there, and then add that final element of, is there anything in here that my players might care about, or is there anything there at least that would start to interact with the things and places that my characters are doing or going in the story? So let's do an example, right? What's there? Why is it there? Why do we care? Some of you might have played a campaign. Actually, I see it on my shelf in the background in the starter set. There is a great story that was published by Wizards of the Coast called The Lost Mines of Phandelver. Now, there's spoilers ahead for that specific one, although I'm not going to get too far into that campaign. I'm just going to talk about the one of the starter sequences. Now, as your players are leaving a road and they're winding away from the starting settlement, they're walking down a road through a forest, and then up ahead, they notice there's a wagon. Now, that wagon is abandoned, and there's full sacks of grain on the wagon, and the grain is spilling out from the backs of those sacks of grain. There's no one there. Upon closer inspection, you might notice that there are some arrows that are sticking out of the sides of one of the wooden wheels in the wagon, and there are pools of blood underneath that wagon, indicating perhaps maybe some kind of skirmish. Now, we'll back up for a second. So we describe what's there, and we can go into detail as much as we want about specifically what's there and what it tells us about the world around that wagon, right? Okay, so there's sacks of grain on the wagon. I know this is the detail, but we can get lost in these details and learn so much about what it tells us about the world and the economy and the people that live in this world, so that your players, they can go in that direction if they choose to do so. Now, since there's sacks of grain, it's traveling from a small settlement to a large city. Maybe that tells us that the settlement is a granary. It's a farmland. This is where they collect and they process grains, and then they take that grains and send it to the city, and they feed the cities, right? Or maybe it means that that settlement is some sort of trading hub, or it's a port, and they're gathering supplies from all over the world. And then, the merchant that was on this wagon got the grain, and he's on the way, right? So it just tells us what's going on in the world. And if you think about things in this way, it will start to give you answers to questions that your players might have. You don't know what they're going to ask before they ask them. So the best thing you can do is prepare. And this is a framework that lets you have answers to these questions that come up randomly from your players. If I just think, okay, what's there? And then I think, okay, why is it there? And then is there any sort of connection between the why is it there to the world that my players are going to interact with, right? So if we go back to the wagon, why is it there? And then why is it abandoned? After your players do some investigation, they're going to notice, okay, the drivers are not here. There are sets of footprints that go off into the woods, and there are different kinds of creatures' footprints from this wagon into the woods. It looks like maybe there was some sort of ambush. Your players are going to love action. They want to probably explore and find out what happened to these travelers. Maybe there's some sort of reward in it for them if they find the people that were apprehended, or if they go and they do the apprehending themselves and get the bandits that did this ambush and they bring them to justice somehow. How would the people back in the village respond to that heroicism, right? Maybe there's a reward in it for them there as well. But again, if I'm just working through that checklist, what's there? Why is it there? Why do I care? We're going to be able to add meaning to these everyday objects and non-player characters that your players are going to interact with. And I think it's a really useful thing for you to think about as you're doing your own DMing. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'll come back with some more DMing tips and story writing tips soon in the future. Until then, have fun and stay writing. My name is Ian, and I'm from the Young Adventure Writers Guild. Looking forward to catching up soon. Bye.